Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Welcome to all of our members, subscribers, and viewers from all across the world. If you're new to my live streams, I have these open for the community to, of course, talk about the latest developments and updates. And then, of course, open the space up for the community for your participation, questions, and input as well after I speak about the subjects that I wanted to speak about tonight. I wanted to talk to you about the fourth phase of the ceasefire prisoner exchange that happened between the Palestinian side and the Israeli side, and the messages that the Palestinian resistance was sending to Israel. Again, with each and every prisoner exchange, the Palestinian resistance, they have a message to Israel, or multiple messages. And Israel takes them very, very seriously. Tonight, I'm going to talk all about that. And I'm also going to be talking about the additional pressure that Donald Trump is applying on Jordan and Egypt, especially by cutting the aid of Jordan. This is something that didn't really get a lot of news coverage, but this is a very significant development. Donald Trump is cutting aid of many countries, and he chose Jordan to be one of them, despite the fact that Jordan is heavily reliant on US aid. I'm also going to be talking about the Arab response when it comes to the forced expulsion proposal of Donald Trump when it comes to the Palestinians, and also about Benjamin Netanyahu and his potential plan to explode everything now and not get into phases 2 and 3, and how that's related to the attempts of Donald Trump when it comes to the additional pressure that he's applying to expel the Palestinian population before his meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu that's about to take place on Tuesday, alongside a couple of other things. And then, of course, I'll open the space up for all of you. To begin with, today, Al-Qassam brigades, they released this video of them releasing the Israeli prisoners of war when it comes to, of course, Gaza. This is the fourth knock of the Palestinian resistance. They're giving them certificates, they have badges for them, and they've released several of them in a very large event that took place this time in the port of Gaza, that Israel disabled, by the way, and destroyed, but it's on the coast of Gaza. These are aerial images of the location. A picture of the commander-in-chief was martyred, and this is a Dodge Ram, that they seized from the Israeli army. And again, some of their commanders with Israeli weapons sending messages to Israel that, we seized some of your equipment and we're using it, and we're going to continue to use it against you. Here they're sending a message by this, saluting the photo of MahmoodOD. The presence, it was very intense today. There were members of Al-Qassam brigades from 4 of their brigades out of their 24. In each of the prisoner exchanges, they have different members in different brigades. This time, the participants in this prisoner exchange were from the Ash-Shati brigade, Ash-Shuja'iyya brigade, Al-Zaytun brigade, and Al-Tufah brigade. And the most significant thing is the commander of Al-Shati brigade, who Israel claimed they killed before, was present during this handover. Israel claimed that they killed him, and there are suspicions that this might be him, by the way, the guy with the red and white kufi. Israel said previously that they killed him. However, he appeared now today in this military parade in Ash-Shati to release the Israeli prisoners of war. So strong messages coming from Al-Qassam brigades, and again, they're speaking with the population, normally roaming around. Israel cannot comprehend. It's like the public cannot comprehend what they're seeing. And how is it being received in Israel? Well, a massive distrust is happening in Israel, especially from the population towards all of the political and military establishment and their media too. People changing their views so quickly at a sudden moment, regardless of everything they were telling the Israeli public before. We destroyed them, Netanyahu, we destroyed all of their brigades, and we're almost done. We won't stop until we eliminate. And then they come up with these positions, sending, and this was one of them who said, this is a very happy day, speaking in Arabic, saying, I'm sitting next to the sea and next to the Gaza port. I tell the Qassam, thank you very much, and for everything. Basically, you were good with us, and 15 months was a very long time, and then he was released. He wants to say to all of the young men who were with him, saying that, I hope you're all well. Like, this is Keith Siegel, I think. And again, the Al-Qassam forces in huge numbers in the Gaza Strip and during this prisoner exchange, unprecedented numbers at that scale, with some of their own manufactured weapons as well, and dealing with the Red Cross and having these signatures in an image of strength, in an image of solidarity, of social cohesion between the people, supporting them. This is something that Israel worked a lot against in Gaza. They tried to turn the people against their resistance inside of Gaza, and from everything that we're seeing, this failed miserably. Not only because of the Israeli attempts, but because of the Israeli actions inside of Gaza. So in Israel, they also released some of the Palestinian prisoners too. By the way, there were a couple of other images coming from Gaza that indicate and show actually how large were the numbers of the Palestinian fighters inside of Gaza. This is one of them here. Very large numbers. Again, from 4 different brigades of Al-Qassam brigades, thousands in the Gaza port attended this prisoner exchange. In the meantime, Israel also released Palestinian prisoners. The Palestinian prisoners that were released today were giving shocking testimonials against Israel. This man was one of them.
أخوكم بالله بلال أبو ديب. أستاذ بلال، كيف كانت ظروف الأسر عندكم؟ كانت أسوأ ظروف اعتقال، ورغم ذلك صمتنا وقاومنا بإذن الله تعالى، محررين فاتحين بإذن الله سنعود. إيش إحساسك بالخروج بالصفقة؟ الحمد لله، كانت أجمل لحظة بحياتي، الحمد لله رب العالمين. الله أكبر، الله الحمد لله رب العالمين. في رسائل حملها معك الأسرة؟ الحمد لله. في رسائل؟ رسائل بإذن الله، كل أسرى صامدين قويين بإذن الله تعالى، وسينتصر على سجانهم برغم أنف كل ظالم بإذن الله تعالى. قديش كانت الظروف صعبة؟ إيش اللي عايشتوه؟ فوق ما تصور. أنا لو جلست عامين كاملين أشرح ما مررنا به لن أشرح ذلك الموقف وذلك العقوبات وذلك. قديش انسجنت؟ 15 سنة. الحمد لله على السلامة. والله تورجيني صورتهم هذه
Excuse me, I noticed that the thing was muted here. There were others who also described, I hope I wasn't muted for too long. I spoke about the guy previously who was, this man who was tearful. He was told that his wife and child were killed. Let me repeat that again, just in case I missed it with when the sound was muted. This guy here, he was released from the Israeli prisons without knowing that Israel killed his wife and daughter. And he was looking at images of his daughter and wife, and he was crying. The level of evil and cruelty when it comes to this entity. And then there were others who made other statements too when it comes to the levels of torture that they faced, especially following the 7th of October. They were describing scenes of, this is it, look. This man was saying that after the 7th of October, they were torturing them so bad, and he was handcuffed and blindfolded for 7 months. 7 months, blindfolded and handcuffed. Others, well, there were images of them. I mean, the images might be a little bit harsh, but we'll try and share some of them. Like these people here. Look at the state of them. Look at the levels of torture, skin problems, all sorts of issues going out from the Israeli prisons. They were torturing them so much, beating them up until the last second. Very, very, very difficult, times that they spent in the Israeli prisons. Others, they came out with challenging Israel, like this man here, an older guy, going out saying, we won't give up, we will continue to fight them up until we liberate the whole of Palestine, saying things of the sort, basically. So some of them come up with this very strong mentality, whilst others, of course, you can see the levels of torture they've been facing from this criminal entity. So very, very difficult testimonials coming from the Palestinian prisoners, in opposition to the situation that the Israeli prisoners are being released from Gaza. And there was another video circulating of the same person who's the commander of Al-Shati brigade, who Israel said they killed during this war. There was a video circulating of him roaming around. Normally, Israel said they killed him again, like the commander of Beit Hanun, who also again popped up. This man is again showing up, and there were reports confirming that he was there in Gaza too, again today, during the prisoner exchange. And I think that's actually from today, without him having anything to cover him, really, just walking normally. So again, Israel, they were humiliated by these reports, by the way. They're being humiliated time after time. It's like they can't justify anything to the population. They're saying we killed them, and then they have to backtrack. Oh, it was a false estimate. Well, how do you want people to believe you? How do you want people to believe you again? Saying that we eliminated Hamas, and these images popping up from Gaza with this massive army, basically debunking all of the lies that Netanyahu has been babbling about for the past 15 months. He said he dismantled the majority of the brigades of Hamas before invading Rafah. He was saying 4 only remained in Rafah, and that's why I need to go there to destroy the remaining brigades of Hamas. Does that look like destruction? Thousands of people, only from a few brigades, 4 out of the 24. Because in this area, several fighters from 4 brigades, like I said before, participated here, unlike with other prisoner exchange ceremonies that they have in Gaza, where other brigades participate, like the northern, other provinces, other towns, other cities inside of the Gaza Strip. Moving on to the situation of the Palestinian people inside of Gaza, of course, there's a lot to do. You know, this place faced a campaign of genocide and full destruction, with the majority of the buildings destroyed in Gaza. However, it's not stopping the people from rebuilding. It's something mesmerizing to see, really, people already working on their destroyed homes individually. You know, no funding from abroad, no projects, no campaign, no talking rubble, no billions required, and they're taking their own initiative and starting to rebuild all of a sudden, just several weeks into the ceasefire. Some people have intense projects, you know, serious projects with multiple workers with them, whilst others, they just rely on their own hands, like this woman over here, building everything on her own. Simply got in a few blocks, creating her own like cement type, mud cement and what have you, and building, moving on. And you're talking about areas that faced full destruction in Gaza, all across of Gaza, in all parts of Gaza. So these were the things when it comes to the ceasefire and the prisoner exchange. Excuse me. Now, when it comes to the ceasefire, moving on to the actual ceasefire and what's happening with the ceasefire. There was a very interesting article published in one of the Israeli newspapers, quoting a man who participated in the Gilad Shalit prisoner exchange in 2011. He had an article. Well, there was an article quoting him in one of the Israeli newspapers, talking about the plans that this man has, that Netanyahu has, saying that Benjamin Netanyahu has a dangerous maneuver planned for the hostage deal. And during his article, he's saying that Benjamin Netanyahu might actually be preparing something that is very dangerous when it comes to the negotiations. Based on what he's saying, Beskin, his surname is, the negotiations based on the second phase will begin on Monday, and it's supposed to end, this negotiation, up until the 30th day of the initial phase of the ceasefire. Now, what's going to happen to the 67 remaining prisoners of war? He's saying, Benjamin Netanyahu, there's a very big danger that he might create a big provocation either in Gaza or in the West Bank or in East Jerusalem that will lead to a total breach of the ceasefire. And if that happens, the 67 Israelis who are remaining inside of Gaza, their fate will be unknown. They might die, they might never come back. Senior members of the negotiating delegation are already preparing the public opinion in Israel that they will never retrieve some of the bodies of the Israelis who were killed by Israel in Gaza because of the destruction, because many bodies are under the rubble, including Israelis. So he's saying that everyone needs to apply pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to implement phase 2 and phase 3 of the ceasefire. implement phase 2 and 3 of the ceasefire and not let him get away with anything. People need to apply pressure as much as possible on him, which leads us to this phase 2. What's happening? Why is Donald Trump adding pressure on the Jordanian side and the Egyptian side, primarily talking about the depopulation of Gaza and the forced expulsion of people? Donald Trump is due to meet Benjamin Netanyahu on Tuesday. But Donald Trump could be trying to have a proposal for Benjamin Netanyahu alongside a potential threat. The proposal would support the threat if Donald Trump comes with this nice proposal saying that, yes, we will be expelling the Palestinians, because although the Egyptian president himself went out and said it won't happen, although there was a rejection by Arab states, there was a meeting today in Cairo by 6 members of the Arab League, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority, outright saying we do not accept the plan of Donald Trump. We reject it outright. And these sides that were present today were the most important sides: Egypt and Jordan, with the borders with Israel, the Saudi government, Qatar, UAE, and also the Palestinian Authority. All of them saying no. But despite that, Donald Trump is saying no, they will accept. No, they will have to accept. They will accept. We do them a lot of favors. Why are you pressurizing them so much? What's happening? He wants to have something on the table to offer Benjamin Netanyahu before they meet on Tuesday, so that he can tell him, look, BB, we have this proposal on the table that you can sell to your public and followers, so that you can try and convince them to continuously support you, continue to support you, maybe protect your government, and move on, please, very quickly with phases 2 and 3 of the ceasefire. Because Donald Trump, he's new in his term. Benjamin Netanyahu, he's going to finish his term. Donald Trump knows that Benjamin Netanyahu might leave at some point. You know, we might have early elections, and even if there are elections in the right time, you're just talking about 1 year. However, he knows he's a very difficult person, and to let this period pass, because he was the one who pushed him into the ceasefire. He wants to have something on the table up until Tuesday. He might even have these escalatory tones after Tuesday too, because what is he going to do? Think about it from an operational perspective. How are you going to implement something? What do you mean? Yes, they will. Egypt said no. Egypt said no over a year ago. They said no again now, not once, but twice. And they're constantly repeating that. They're sending people to protest on the borders. Jordan, there's something more dodgy going on with Jordan. I'll talk about it in a second. Egypt outright said, and when it comes to Gaza, the main side is Egypt. Is he going to do it? Is he going to be able to? Even if you have a declaration, even if you now, the reports of him declaring, you know, the change of the name of the West Bank to Judea and Samaria, declare whatever you want to declare. When it comes to the big question is when it comes to the implementation, are you going to go and do the work, do the dirty, ugly, genocidal work on behalf of Israel instead of Israel? I don't think so, because you're saying we're going to withdraw from multiple parts in Syria, for example, and we want to end wars. Or are you going to send your troops in Gaza? They will face hell that they've never faced. They will face hells like worse than the Afghanistan hell in Gaza. Don't think that the Palestinian resistance stops with Israeli genociders. Every invader that comes against the will of the Palestinian people, they will face the blows and the wrath of the Palestinian resistance. So he's not going to do that necessarily. And it's very unlikely. But why is he saying that? He's saying that to be used as leverage during the negotiations and to make the deals go ahead. He babbles a lot, he talks a lot. He initially comes up with these very high demands to try and get something out, have some sort of a deal. Is it going to work? It's not looking like it's going to work. Plus, the people of Gaza are the main people interested in this, and they already said no. But something interesting is happening when it comes to Jordan. That's something interesting and dangerous at the same time. Donald Trump stopped the aid, he cut the aid of Jordan. Not many people were talking about this, and there weren't many responses coming from Jordan. However, Donald Trump stopped the aid for Jordan. You're talking about just over 1 billion. 1 billion might not seem a lot when it comes to the US and US aid. He had a 90-day freeze on Jordan alongside some other countries too, with the exception of Israel and Egypt. So he didn't freeze it with Egypt, he froze it with Jordan. Is he trying to send a message to Jordan? Of course he is. Is the Jordanian government going to comply with Donald Trump after he has this freeze? That's something we're going to have to see, because so far, the only statement that we heard was the statement that came from the foreign minister of Jordan. That was several days back. In recent days, they've been more quiet, apart, of course, from that meeting that happened in Egypt. However, even with that, the fact that they participated in this meeting with Egypt, outright rejecting, jointly with other countries too, this is showing the United States that even if, again, it could be a message from Jordan, even if you want to use this aid as leverage against us, if you want to cut the aid, and that aid is significant to Jordan, by the way, over $1 billion to Jordan is a lot of money. He's saying that they're sending a message that we might have alternatives. Okay, we might not have the same influx immediately, but there are alternatives that other countries can participate in, and we can potentially have other plans. Because from a Jordanian perspective, if you're talking about expelling the population of the West Bank, they already said before, it's going to be a declaration of war. If you do that, it's going to be a declaration of war on Jordan. What does that mean? That means that, well, we're going to change positions, right? We're going to change positions, and we might open the doors to people who you don't really like. Many countries have an interest in Jordan. Iran has an interest in Jordan. Talking about Iran, which is the final thing that I wanted to mention before I open the space up for you. Iran, they are sending a message to the United States. They're saying that nuclear attacking the nuclear facilities in Iran will lead to an all-out war. And they're sending that message now to Donald Trump just before he's going to meet Benjamin Netanyahu. A military attack on nuclear facilities is the biggest mistake that the US can make, the Iranian foreign minister said in a very clear message. We will respond immediately and decisively. All options are on the table for a resolution against the nuclear threat. So, Iran, although they have had this looming response, and they were saying, no, we're interested in de-escalation, we want peace in the region, we are a force for peace, and they've proven that, they are prepared too. And that preparation is very visible. It has been very visible since their multiple attacks on Israel. It has been very visible with their support for the Palestinian resistance and other resistance movements in the region too, and has been very visible with the way they were able to protect themselves from the Israeli attack. That was a massive failure, that mostly failed. And you're talking about Iranian anti-aircraft missiles, Iranian-made, the Bavar 373, excuse me, and other systems that they obtained from Russia. And now they're even in an even better position, because they now have this strategic agreement formed already with Russia, and they have a very similar agreement with China that they try and keep on the low as much as possible, because China doesn't like to be in the forefront or being viewed as a country that participates in any armed conflict. But under the radar, they're doing everything to be the biggest superpower in the world. So from an Iranian perspective, they're still open, but again, they're open for the option that things might escalate, and they surely do not have faith in Donald Trump. They know that Donald Trump destroyed the previous agreement that they had with the Obama administration, although Trump 2.0 appears to be slightly different than Trump in the first period of his presidency, when he did all of these things against Iran. Because although he had many hostile statements when it comes to Iran during his campaign, after he became president, he's saying, no, actually, when he was asked about a war, Israel attacking Iran, no, we hope we can get a deal without any of that happening. And I think we can get to a deal. And even if we don't get to a deal, I guess that's fine. What does that mean? That means that, from judging from this, he is looking to de-escalate. How can that be accompanied by what appears to be escalatory and inflammatory statements he is making when it comes to Israel? Well, his inflammatory and bigoted statements against the Palestinian people and general threats, all out threats, are part of his personality and the way he runs things. And many of them could be due to his ties with the Zionist lobby inside of the United States, saying that he still forced Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire deal through Steve Witkoff that Benjamin Netanyahu did not want to agree to from the beginning. And that's why Netanyahu did not publish the details of the ceasefire, by the way, that really, really ties Benjamin Netanyahu. However, Trump knows that there might be tensions between now and phase 2. And although Witkoff said, I would like to see phase 2 going ahead, Trump saying if phase 2 won't go ahead, there'll be lots of problems. He wants something on the table when it comes to Benjamin Netanyahu. After the meeting, the statements of Donald Trump, they might escalate, they might de-escalate. But what's for sure, when it comes to Gaza, the people have spoken and the people have proven to the whole world they are not getting out of their land. The only people who should get out of the land are the people who occupied the land and expelled its indigenous people. That is, unless everyone wants to live in happily with full equality between the Jordan River to the sea. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you, and I'll open the space up for your participation. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in for another live stream. Thank you to the Virus 455 and Egbertina and Sean Hurl, much appreciated. What would be the repercussions of Is Not Real going back on the ceasefire? And how many countries have pledged support for the rebuilding of Gaza? And what does Iran's new treaty entail? That's a very interesting and multi-layered question from TMZ BGD. We'll start with the first one. What would be the repercussions of Is Not Real if they go back on the ceasefire? Well, they have seen during 15 months that the Palestinian resistance is unbeatable, that they have a lot to pay, not just internally, but globally, that there are fronts, genuine fronts, there are genuine, solid people who stick to their morals and to their faith and actually do the right thing by supporting the Palestinian people. That really harmed Israel very much. And they know that they were forced into this ceasefire, and if they go out of this ceasefire, as arrogant as they are, or as arrogant as they want to act, they actually might be dealing with something very bad, because they're dealing with a president in the United States who is known to be unpredictable and uses his unpredictability as leverage during his presidency terms. That's why Steve Witkoff told Netanyahu, when he forced him to sign the ceasefire, that the hell that Trump was talking about in the Middle East includes you. So all of a sudden, Trump uses different terminologies to apply them whenever they want. That would be a very dangerous move from Benjamin Netanyahu, and Benjamin Netanyahu would risk himself directly. The fact that Donald Trump invited him to the US now is in his favor, because he's a wanted war criminal. He's a wanted war criminal, but by the American president inviting him, the American president is telling him, you're a war criminal. We've had lots of war criminals here who are still roaming around freely. He himself, Donald Trump, when he was asked about Putin and the fact that he's a killer, he once said in an interview, we have lots of killers too. He knows that very well. But what he's saying to Benjamin Netanyahu, you're a war criminal, you're a killer, I'm inviting you here. So I'm doing you a favor. We're not in the early days now, and it's a new phase. But he still wants to play ball, and have some sort of leverage. It would be very problematic on Israel, and there would be a very big risk of Iran actually implementing, actioning True Promise 3. That would be devastating on the child-killing entity. And then how many countries have pledged to support the rebuilding of Gaza? No confirmed numbers, but there will be enough to rebuild. And what does Iran's new treaty entail? Do you mean the treaty with the US, the nuclear treaty, or do you mean the treaty with Russia that they had? If you wouldn't mind saying, and then I can get to that in a sec. And then also we had SJ's Israel going away with the atrocities they've committed. Clearly not. I mean, first and foremost, we need to understand that there are many war criminals walking on this planet, people who killed way more than Benjamin Netanyahu. Tony Blair went to an illegal war, lied to the British public in broad daylight about fake weapons of mass destruction that were non-existential, like the US did and the Bush administration. Tony Blair came back to the UK and he got a knighthood. He was honored for going and slaughtering 1 million Iraqis and more in Afghanistan. George Bush, another war criminal, and his administration, all of them are war criminals, apart from those who died now. They're roaming around freely. But now what's different is, have you heard of the Hague group now? 8 countries focusing primarily on the judicial side of things when it comes to Israel, to constantly take action, illegal action against Israel. The Hague group, they're called, the specific tasks to make Israel comply with international law, liberate Palestine, and bring these people to justice. Primarily made up of global South countries, but the leading thing that they're aspiring to is to ending the occupation, liberating Palestine. The countries are not afraid of repercussions, although some of them have good ties with some of the Western establishments supporting Israel. They're opening the path for other countries to join, and they may. And they just want to put an end to the breaches of this pariah entity, breaching international law every other day, or every second, and focusing more on law rather than politics. That means the wall is cracking and is collapsing on Israel, that shield that they had from the constant United States vetoes in their favor. That's something very significant. That's something very important. And I think it will have an impact, because the Israeli government and the Israeli army, they're warning everyone in Israel from traveling abroad. And they're saying that you need to be very careful. You need to hide your identities. You need to make sure that you don't share things on social media. You don't share your face on social media. You can't talk about your activity in the Israeli army, all of that. And all of these things are very significant. And this, by the way, was the image of the meeting that took place in Cairo with the Arab leaders. Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the Palestinian Authority, and Qatar rejecting the plan of Donald Trump. Also an important move. And let's go. The last question was from SJ, by the way. Christopher Kelly, the pressure on Bibi would be insane if he goes back to war. I fear the PO prisoners of war may have intel read the tunnels and procedures to give the IDF leg up. They've been lying catch up since October 7th. The second one, absolutely not, because the Palestinian resistance, they know how to protect themselves very well when it comes to that. And several were released before. They didn't get anything apart from booby trap tunnels, and they got buried inside them. The previous war cabinet member, Gadi Eisenkot, who was the previous chief of staff, he lost his son and his nephew in tunnels inside of Gaza that were meant to be detonated when the Israeli force come inside. It was hell for them. They tried to fill them up with the seawater. Don't you remember that before? That didn't work. Why? Because it's a sophisticated network. MahmoodOD was a very scientific person. People used to call him a scientific icon. Physics, geometry, engineering, all of that. It's a maze under Gaza. But there would be a lot of pressure on him if he would want to go back to the war. Plus, the big question is, what are you going to do next time that you haven't done in the past time? And what are you trying to achieve? You've destroyed almost everything. 15 months of genocide, of pure evil, terrorism backed by the United States, backed by despicable Western governments as well. What are you going to do next? Nuclear? Nuclear would risk Israel. That's why they haven't used nuclear, by the way. Otherwise, if it was more distant, they would have nuked them. And guess what? Western countries would have supported Israel, by the way. The US would have supported. Europe would say, oh, yeah, sure, no problem. So there's a lot to pay for Benjamin Netanyahu if he continues. Plus, look at the scenes from Gaza. They're not going anywhere. Splatted, do you feel Palestinians want a two-state solution, or they aim eventually to evict the Israelis from the region? Apologies if you already asked this before. I feel like the Palestinian people just want to be left alone and be given their equal rights. However, history has shown that rights and freedom are not given on a golden plate with a silver spoon. They are fought for. And in history, countries who liberated themselves, and people who liberated themselves from all parts of the world, sacrificed and paid very, very heavy prices, and paid with a lot of destruction. Even if we talk about Africa, South Asia, other Asian countries, Latin America, parts of Europe, even parts of America itself, people paid with grave sacrifices. And the same applies with the Palestinian people. So they will continue up until they get their rights. Will they agree to, if someone tomorrow comes and actually enforces a two-state solution, do you think the Palestinian people would say no? You'd have a bit of a give and take. However, there would be certain rights that will never disappear and fall with the progression of things, or like, become invalid, like the right to return. No one has a right to argue the right to return of the Palestinian refugees who were expelled in 1948 and were told by the Zionist militias at the time, go, you'll come back after the war. Only for the Zionist gangs to form a big Zionist terror army and then close the borders on them. No one has the right to tell these people not to go back. So the two-state solution is very problematic. However, if something happens and it's on the table and it's enforced and it's general and there's willingness even from Israel, you need to understand, you need to have someone willing to have an agreement. In Israel, they just passed a law in the Israeli Knesset, passed with over a 90% majority saying no to a Palestinian state. You're talking about people leading Israel who do not recognize a Palestinian people. Some of their pseudo-historians claim that the Palestinian people are nothing but Arabs who immigrated to Palestine under bogus pretext, like surnames belonging to other countries too. Same people ignoring, who claim these things, ignore the surnames of all of the Palestinian villages and towns and cities that many Palestinian families have. And guess who claims that? The fake people, basically, from all sorts of parts of the world, coming from East Europe and other parts of the world, changing their names, 1-2 generations claiming to own the land based on these fantasies, based on these delusions that they believe in. So that's not something. The only stable and absolutely just solution is a one-state solution. A one-state solution where everyone receives equal rights from the Jordan River to the sea. You like it, like it. If you don't like it, go somewhere else, no problem. Because then you have a problem with the concept of equal rights, by the way. And that's something that the Western establishment supporting Israel is shamelessly still trying to defend, the concept of inequality. They're embedding inequality by supporting a supremacist, apartheid, racist entity in Palestine against all of the values that they preach and promote and approach other nations with a moral high ground with. They have the audacity to speak about human rights and democracy and women's rights and individuality and freedom and rule of law and all of a sudden everything becomes invalid when it comes to Palestine. So that is not going to end up until we get rid of this cancer controlling Palestine. Then it wouldn't be about evicting anyone. It would be simply about everyone accepting the fact that we're all equal under the law. Very simple. TMZBGD, did you see this Trump, how Trump, the guy who talks about China's suppression of free speech, starting deporting people who say free Palestine? Of course. They approach other countries with the moral high ground, with this supremacy, neo-colonialist approach, and any of their wrongdoing, it's as if it's nothing, as if they're entitled to do it. So the past 15 months have shown the whole world, really, what they're about and how genuine they are. Violet, when the dead prisoners are released, will Hamas still be out in numbers? What's to stop Netanyahu bombing them to stop the ceasefire deal? Well, that's a very interesting question. What prevents Netanyahu from bombing them now? In agreement, and the fact that they have Israeli prisoners of war with them. Will it be the same when they have dead bodies? Well, I'll tell you one thing. They're going to be leaving alive people up until Israel totally withdraws from Gaza, by the way, and they have bulletproof agreements for the future. Right? Don't think that they're going to let go of the Gaza division commanders like nothing. No, they're going to keep them there. They're going to be nice and cozy up until Israel adheres to all of the demands of the Palestinian people. And like they did before, they can be out in very big numbers. Because that's what a ceasefire agreement is about at the end of the day. Iran plans after the negative answer from the Arab leaders. Trump is pushing Europe to take the Palestinians. You know, this Trump example, this Trump calling to deport the Palestinians is a prime example of how blind and totally corrupt so many of the Western establishments and leaders are. Internally, they complain about refugees. Externally, they cause problems that cause refugees to seek shelter in their own countries. Stop meddling with the rest of the world. Let people live in peace. Do you understand? So then Europe can have an ultra rise in right wing. Oh no, the immigrants are coming. You supported this. You went to wars in Afghanistan. You went to wars in Iraq. You caused problems between India and Pakistan. You caused problems in Palestine. And you complain about immigrants coming. Stick your noses out of these countries. Simple. And what he's doing now is a prime example of how hypocrite they are. They're such hypocrites. Stop dealing with these people. You don't want to, by the way, with all my personal disapproval of all of this talk about immigration, because all of us are immigrants from somewhere, by the way, everyone, right? People immigrated from one place to another. The world doesn't belong to one group of people. Do you know what I mean? The world is ours, right? You travel here, and the main thing is not imposing your will on other people, expelling people against their will from their land, from the land that they were born in, and then complaining about it, right? Donald Trump talking about immigrants, talking about Mexicans, and talking about deporting pro-Palestine. You're an immigrant to America. You want to go back in history? America belongs to the Native Americans. Where did you come from? You came from Europe. You're the occupier. You're the foreigner. You're the invader. You're the immigrant. Ask a Native American. Who's the immigrant? The people who look like Donald Trump are immigrants to America. So all of this talk should really stop. But I mean, many people are still fooled by it. But it's a part of their game. Playing on this, nationality thing, right? Our country, our borders, our this and that. To instill all of this division, by the way, between people to make them easier to control. The way we've been living in the past century isn't the way people have been living from a long time ago, by the way. People were moving from one place to another, traveling thing. There were no borders, right? And what have you. As in the way they are now, right? TMZBG, do you think these countries could go elsewhere for the aid? Yeah, of course they can. And what Trump doesn't realize is that the more he applies pressure on... History has shown, the past several decades have shown, the more the US imposed these criminal sanctions on countries, because why criminal? Because when you impose sanctions on a country, you don't impose sanctions just on government or what have you. Especially when you're talking about countries, by the way, not having anything towards you, but just choosing their own independent economic path or political will. We're not talking about countries like Israel committing a genocide now that should have sanctions and embargo against it and action taken to take down their regime. The United States administration has been imposing sanctions on countries simply because they do not allow themselves to be robbed by the US for US and multinational corporations take control of their either oil fields or precious metals or reserves and what have you. And they'll have coups and violent organizations take down democratically elected governments and what have you. But now you have a back door. There's a back door to all of that. It's called the BRICS. And members of the BRICS have shown very well that they can cope even with the US has sanctions against Russia. The US has sanctions against Iran, right? Iran is doing fine, several million barrels a day. Russia's doing fine too. As a matter of fact, the Russian economy improved. The European economy collapsed after the Ukraine war. Look at the currency in Russia, manufacturing, everything. There are other countries to deal with. But Donald Trump is continuing down this heritage of arrogance with other countries. The United States empire is not accepting the fact that we're witnessing the collapse of the unipolar world and looking at the establishment and formation of a new world order, of a new multipolar world order, with the power being divided in a different manner than how it was before. And he's trying to act all tough with that. It isn't going to work. Donna, why did Israel refuse to take back the bodies of that man's family? Benjamin Netanyahu did not want to get bodies in the early phases of the prisoner exchange. There was a proposal for him to get the body of one of the Israeli prisoners of war who Israel killed during the genocide in Gaza in the first knock, but Israel refused. And her family said, Netanyahu did not get the body of my daughter so that it doesn't affect his attempts to have an image of victory. They still got a body, but they got the body of Oron Shaul, a soldier who was taken by the Palestinian resistance during the Israeli aggression on Gaza in 2014, who Israel was neglecting for all of this time. Israel claimed it was a rescue operation, but really and truly it was an agreement. So he doesn't want bodies to be released now because it would affect his image. He's trying to delay it as much as possible. He wants to get as many alive people as possible before talking about bodies. Saying that, the Palestinian side, they will keep the heavier Israeli prisoners of war for up until Israel completely withdraws from Gaza. And they know that in Israel. Of course, they just don't publish it. Like you've seen, there is no publication of the ceasefire agreement. We've all seen that, right? You can't find it anywhere. The ceasefire agreement is hidden. We just get reports about what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen tomorrow, who's going to come up in the next knock. And the name exchanges happen just days after, sometimes one day after. And God is my shepherd. Thank you. And also, yeah, and Sean Hurl, Egbertina, and the virus as well. Thank you. Iran plans. I'm convinced Trump wants to move the Gaza. He says to reconstruct, but they want to destroy the tunnels. Yeah, like I said, I mean, what we've seen in the past 10 days proves exactly what's happening. If people are going back to an area that is destroyed in its majority in the north and just making do and being so happy to return, not believing themselves. By the way, you need to understand how significant this is. Israel was intending to completely prevent people from going back to the north. This was a red line for them because they wanted to depopulate it. And now with the scenes of the people returning in Israel, everyone started to say it's going to be impossible to do this again. Because how is anyone going to believe him now? The people who started to criticize Netanyahu first were those who fought in Gaza. How can you withdraw from Netzarim, our pride? How can you withdraw and let the people back to the north? Who is Trump to try and do anything to Gaza? Who is he? Who is he compared to the people of Gaza and to the people of the land? He's nothing. And what Israel hasn't been able to achieve, whether Trump really wants it or not, what Israel hasn't been able to achieve for the past 15 months, Donald Trump will not be able to achieve it. And the Falcon Retreat, thank you, and everyone else participating. Thank you so much. And Jack, Ayub, my brother, thank you. Okay. See if we have anything else before we wrap up. Sean, Mahmoud, American mercenaries are in Gazan corridors. Are they legitimate targets if ceasefire breaks down? Yeah, there are American mercenaries working jointly under the supervision of an Egyptian company. These mercenaries take anywhere between $1,000 to $10,000 a day. Mostly veterans. Some of them speak Arabic too. You need to understand what brought them to Gaza. How did they come to Gaza? They came after the negotiations. So they negotiated with Hamas about them being present there temporarily, not permanently. On the longer term, everyone is going to be out. However, temporarily, they're there for this period because, of course, the Palestinian side did not want Israel on these places. And in the meantime, much of what's happening is primarily to save face. By the way, this is when you see how things turn in the next several months, you'll understand why Israel did this now. To save face as much as possible. Now, are they legitimate targets if the ceasefire breaks down? I spoke about a fact the other day that the presence of these American mercenaries and some of the Egyptian forces in Gaza could be something not necessarily against the Palestinians, but against Israel, by the way. Why? Because if Netanyahu says, for example, I want to go and restart the war in Gaza, but there are American forces there, that's a big excuse for him. He will tell everyone in Israel, look, the American forces are still there. The Americans say they want to stay there and make sure, they want to check everyone going back up. They're our biggest ally. We can't do anything there. We will risk having a problem with them or accidentally killing one or two of them. It will make a lot of problems. So that could be one thing. But if they remain without approval or coordination with the Palestinian resistance, then of course they would be legitimate targets. What can they do against the Palestinian resistance? What are they going to do exactly with a machine gun? And nothing. They're not going to do anything. But that's not the purpose, them being like mercenaries to do something that Israel wants to do, like on their behalf. It's not what they're there for, by the way. And at one point they will be withdrawing from the Netzarim corridor. They're not going to stay there. It's a temporary mission. They get paid by the day, but they get paid daily. They're not even paid for a whole campaign. Little Sparrow, when can international humanitarian agencies and foreign journalists enter Gaza? How can investigate what happened? Well, it was Israel preventing them from going in. That's number one. So the foreign journalists or mainstream media primarily, they were showing images from the sky over Gaza. They were showing the ruins. They weren't on the ground to see what's under the ruins and what's in the streets and the people themselves. Another way to dehumanize people. Saying that there was no excuse for any foreign journalists or foreign mainstream media, by the way, because the genocide was being live streams. All it takes is you simply posting what the people are posting, like what we do on social media, right? However, that shows you how corrupt they are. A humanitarian, they're already going in. But the entry of like foreign news agencies and stuff, that might be something that would happen at a bigger scale, of course, should the ceasefire hold and we get into phase 2 and 3. And we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in for another live stream, everyone. Thank you for everyone who participated in the live stream. Everyone sent supers, the virus, Egbertina, Sean Hurl, God is my shepherd. All of your input as well. Apologies, of course, if we didn't get all of them. In the meantime, everyone, stay blessed, take care, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Take care.